The massive space station called Haven's Rest floated in the darkness between three star systems like a silver jewel catching distant starlight. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its countless ports every day, bringing traders, diplomats, and travelers from hundreds of different worlds. But today was different. Today, the station hummed with tension that made even the busiest merchants speak in whispers. Sylviana Moonweaver stood at the observation deck of her flagship, watching the station grow larger as her fleet approached. Her pointed ears twitched, slightly as she sensed the emotions of her crew through the bio-neural links that connected all elven vessels. Fear mixed with determination flowed through the ship like water through ancient roots. She understood their feelings. This meeting could decide the fate of the entire galaxy. Her ships looked more like living things than metal constructs. The hulls curved and twisted in organic patterns, covered in what appeared to be bark-like armor that actually grew and healed itself when damaged. Soft lights pulsed along their surfaces like veins carrying lifeblood. Each vessel had been cultivated in the great tree yards of the elven homeworld, taking decades to mature into the graceful warships that now accompanied their High Admiral. Lyrelay Dawnbreaker approached from behind, her boots making no sound on the living deck. As Sylviana's second-in-command, she had earned her position through centuries of service and an intuitive understanding of both diplomacy and warfare. Her silver hair was braided with small crystals that glowed softly in the dim light. "The Saurians have already arrived," Lyrelay reported quietly. 12 heavy dreadnoughts and twice as many escort vessels. Commander Zixthara is making no effort to hide her intentions. Sylviana nodded without turning from the viewport. Through the transparent biomembrane, she could see the angular, brutal shapes of the Saurian fleet, positioned on the far side of the station. Their ships looked like weapons even when standing still, all sharp edges and heavy armor plating designed to intimidate as much as protect. Dark metal hulls bristled with weapon ports and sensor arrays that swept space constantly, searching for threats or opportunities. "And the Nexus Coalition?" Sylviana asked. 3 vessels, but you know how their technology works. Those 3 ships probably carry more firepower than both our fleets combined. Valana Starseer glided up to join them, her robes flowing around her like captured starlight. As the fleet's mystic advisor, she often saw patterns that others missed. Her ancient eyes held wisdom gathered over nearly 1,000 years of life, and right now, those eyes were troubled. "I sense something," Valana said softly. "A presence I cannot identify. Something watches from the void between stars." Sylviana finally turned from the viewport to face her advisors. Her own eyes held the weight of command and the hope of her people. The Starlight Confederation had ruled their portion of the galaxy through wisdom and careful balance for millennia, but that balance was crumbling. Resources were becoming scarce, territories were being disputed, and the younger races were growing bold in their demands for expansion. "Tell me about the Kepler Nebula situation again," she requested, though she knew the details by heart. Lyrelay's expression darkened. "Rich deposits of rare minerals that all 3 powers need for their advanced technologies. The nebula sits at the border of our territories, unclaimed by ancient treaty. But the Saurians have begun mining operations without permission from any neutral authority, which violates the Galactic Accords," Sylviana added. "The Saurians claim the Accords are outdated," Valana said. "They argue that might makes right in the current age. Commander Zixthara has publicly stated that her empire will take what it needs to survive and grow." Through the bio-neural link, Sylviana felt her crew's anxiety spike as proximity alarms chimed softly throughout the ship. More vessels were arriving at the station, and tensions were rising with each new arrival. She could sense the fear of the civilian population aboard Haven's Rest as military ships from 3 different empires gathered in what was supposed to be neutral space. The Saurian Empire had grown aggressive over the past century, expanding their territory through conquest and intimidation. Their reptilian commanders believed that strength was the only currency that mattered in galactic politics. They had evolved on a harsh world where only the strongest survived, and they brought that philosophy to their interactions with other species. Commander Zixthara was the perfect example of Saurian military thinking. She had clawed her way up through the ranks by defeating rivals in both combat and politics. Her scales bore scars from dozens of battles, and her yellow eyes missed nothing that could be turned to advantage. She commanded respect through fear, and demanded obedience through force. The Nexus Coalition was different entirely. Their crystalline ships moved through space like living geometry, shifting and reconfiguring themselves as needed. General Vorthak and his collective consciousness approached problems through pure logic and mathematical precision. They viewed the current crisis as an equation that needed solving, with variables that could be adjusted to achieve the desired outcome. But the elves had their own concerns. Their biotechnology was advanced beyond what most species could comprehend, but it required specific resources to maintain. The minerals in the Kepler Nebula were essential for feeding the great tree ships and maintaining the delicate balance of their living vessels. Without access to those resources, the Starlight Confederation would slowly wither and die. Incoming. "Transmission from the station," reported the communications officer, her voice carrying through the ship's neural network. Silviana straightened her formal robes and activated the holographic display. The image of Station Administrator Chen appeared, her human features showing the strain of managing a crisis that could spiral into galactic war at any moment. "Hi, Admiral Moonweaver. Welcome to Haven's Rest. I hope your journey was peaceful." "As peaceful as any journey can be in these troubled times," Silviana replied diplomatically. "I trust the other delegations have arrived safely." "Commander, Zixathara is already aboard, and General Vorthak's ships entered the system an hour ago. However, I must inform you that preliminary discussions have not been productive." That was diplomatic language for complete failure. Silviana had expected as much. The three powers had fundamentally different approaches to everything, from basic philosophy to military strategy. Finding common ground would require either exceptional wisdom or exceptional pressure. "We will dock within the hour," Silviana said. "Please prepare the main conference chamber. It seems we have much to discuss." As the transmission ended, she turned back to the viewport and watched the station growing larger. Somewhere in those gleaming corridors, the fate of billions of beings would be decided in the coming days. She only hoped that wisdom would prevail over violence, though her centuries of experience suggested that hope might be misplaced. The galaxy held its breath as three ancient powers prepared to determine their future through words rather than weapons, not knowing that a fourth player was already moving through the darkness toward them. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Leviathan's edge, watching the stars through the main viewport as her ship moved through the void at speeds that would have seemed impossible to her ancestors. The human dreadnought cut through space with purposeful efficiency, its hull designed not for beauty or intimidation, but for maximum effectiveness in any situation that might arise. The ship itself told the story of human engineering philosophy. Clean lines and practical angles created a vessel that looked almost simple compared to the exotic designs favored by other species. But that simplicity was deceptive. Every surface served multiple purposes, every system had backup systems, and every weapon was designed to work when everything else failed. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park looked up from her weapons console, her dark hair pulled back in the regulation style that kept it out of her face during long shifts. As the ship's chief weapons officer, she understood better than most what made human military technology different from anything else in the galaxy. "Captain, we're receiving that distress signal again from Haven's Rest," she reported. "The automated message says they need neutral mediators for a diplomatic crisis between three major powers." Maya turned from the viewport to study the tactical display that showed their current position relative to the station. They had been monitoring galactic communications for months, learning everything they could about the political situation developing in this region of space. The timing of this crisis was almost perfect for humanity's needs. "Dr. Foster, what's your assessment of the situation?" Maya asked. Dr. Amanda Foster approached from her station near the science console, carrying a data pad filled with information about the three alien civilizations. As the ship's head of xenobiology and diplomatic relations, she had spent years studying other species and their cultures, preparing for the day when humanity would finally reveal itself to the galaxy. The Starlight Confederation, the Saurian Empire, and the Nexus Coalition have been maintaining an uneasy balance for centuries, she explained. But that balance is breaking down. Resources are becoming scarce. Territories are being disputed. and none of them trust the others enough to find peaceful solutions. Maya nodded, understanding the implications. Humanity had been watching this situation develop from a distance, studying the three powers and learning their strengths and weaknesses. Now the time had come to step out of the shadows and take their place as a galactic power. The elves are technologically advanced but bound by complex honor codes that limit their options, Dr. Foster continued. They prefer diplomatic solutions but have the military power to enforce their will when necessary. Their bioships are impressive, but require specific resources to maintain. The Saurians are more straightforward, added Lisa from her weapons station. They believe in strength through conquest and aren't interested in negotiations unless they're dealing from a position of overwhelming power. Their ships are heavily armed and armored, but follow predictable tactical patterns. And the Nexus? Coalition? Maya asked. Collective consciousness with mathematical precision in everything they do, Dr. Foster replied. They approach problems through logic and calculation rather than emotion or intuition. Their technology can manipulate space and time itself, but they're vulnerable to unpredictable variables that don't fit their models. Maya studied the information displayed on her command screen, considering the opportunities and risks of revealing humanity's presence. They had spent decades preparing for this moment, building ships and weapons that could compete with the established powers while developing strategies that took advantage of human adaptability and innovation. The Leviathan's edge was the culmination of that preparation. Its hull was made from advanced alloys that could absorb and deflect energy weapons while remaining light enough for rapid maneuvering. Its weapon systems combined traditional kinetic projectiles with energy weapons and electronic warfare capabilities that could disrupt enemy communications and targeting systems. But the real advantage wasn't in the ship's technology. It was in the minds of the crew members who operated it. Humans had learned warfare through millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of recorded history. They understood tactics and strategy in ways that species who had achieved peace through other means could never match. Admiral Turner is monitoring the situation from the fleet base, Maya said, referring to the overall commander of human military operations in this sector. She's authorized us to make contact and offer mediation services, but only if we can do so from a position of strength. What kind of strength are we talking about? Lisa asked, though she already suspected the answer. The kind that makes them listen to what we have to say? Maya replied with a slight smile. Prepare the ship for full combat readiness, but keep all weapons powered down. We're going to introduce ourselves to the galaxy, and first impressions matter. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency as they prepared for what would become one of the most important moments in human history. Communication systems were checked and rechecked to ensure they could interface with alien technology. Translation protocols were loaded with everything they knew about the three languages they would encounter. Defensive systems were brought online but kept in passive mode to avoid appearing threatening. Dr. Foster reviewed her notes on diplomatic procedures and cultural sensitivities. The elves valued politeness and respect for tradition. The Saurians respected strength and directness. The Nexus Coalition appreciated logical arguments and precise information. Somehow she would need to communicate with all three groups while establishing humanity as a credible neutral party. Captain, we're approaching the Haven's Rest system, reported the navigation officer. Sensors are picking up multiple fleets in the area. The Elven ships are on the starboard side of the station, Saurian vessels to port, and the Nexus Coalition is maintaining position above the station's north pole. Maya moved to the tactical display to study the disposition of forces. Each fleet was positioned to respond quickly to threats while maintaining clear fields of fire. It was a classic standoff situation where any aggressive move by one party would trigger immediate responses from the others. Impressive, Lisa commented as she analyzed the alien ship designs. The Elven vessels look like they're alive. The Saurian ships are built like flying fortresses, and those Nexus Coalition ships seem to be changing shape even as we watch. Each design reflects the nature of the species that built it, Dr. Foster observed. The elves work with nature rather than against it, so their ships grow and adapt. The Saurians expect to fight their way through any obstacle, so their ships are built to take and give punishment. The Nexus Coalition sees reality as something that can be altered through proper understanding, so their ships can reconfigure themselves as needed. And our ships? Maya asked. Built to win, Lisa answered simply. No matter what the circumstances, the Leviathan's Edge continued its approach toward the station, its passive sensors gathering information about the alien fleets, while its computers analyzed everything from weapon configurations to power signatures. The data would be invaluable for understanding the capabilities and limitations of potential enemies or allies. "Captain, we're being scanned," reported the sensor officer. "All three fleets are trying to identify us." "Let them look," Maya said, calmly. "But don't give them anything more than basic ship configuration data. Let them wonder about our capabilities." She understood the importance of mystery in first contact situations. The three powers would be trying to determine whether humanity represented a threat, an opportunity, or simply an irrelevant newcomer. By revealing just enough information to pique their curiosity, while keeping their true capabilities hidden, she could control the initial dynamic of any negotiations. "Incoming transmission from Haven's Rest Station Control," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Maya ordered. The image of Station Administrator Chen appeared on the main screen, her expression showing both hope and caution. Behind her, Maya could see the bustling activity of a station trying to manage three potentially hostile fleets while maintaining some semblance of normalcy. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself and state your intentions. This system is currently under diplomatic protection." Maya stepped forward, knowing that her next words would change the course of galactic history forever. "This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the human vessel Leviathan's Edge. We've received your distress signal requesting neutral mediation for the current crisis. Humanity offers its services as an impartial party interested in peaceful resolution of this dispute." The main diplomatic chamber of Haven's Rest had been designed to accommodate dozens of different species, with adjustable gravity fields, atmospheric controls, and seating arrangements that could adapt to various physiologies. Today, it felt smaller than usual as representatives from three of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations faced each other across a circular table that seemed to emphasize their divisions rather than encourage cooperation. Sylviana Moonweaver sat with the natural grace that came from centuries of diplomatic experience, her robes flowing around her like captured starlight. Beside her, Liralee maintained the alert posture of a warrior ready for action, while Valana's ancient eyes studied patterns that others could not see. The elven delegation radiated quiet confidence mixed with growing concern about the deteriorating situation. Commander Zixathara dominated her section of the chamber through sheer physical presence, her scaled hide bearing the scars of countless battles, and her yellow eyes missing nothing that could be turned to advantage. The two Saurian officers flanking her were equally imposing, their weapons visible despite the station's peace protocols. They made no effort to hide their disdain for what they considered elaborate diplomatic theater. General Vorthak's crystalline form shifted and pulsed with internal light as the collective consciousness processed information from thousands of individual minds. The Nexus Coalition delegation moved with mathematical precision, each gesture calculated for maximum efficiency. Their very presence seemed to make the air around them hum with barely contained energy. Dr. Amanda Foster entered the chamber with the confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. Her simple human clothing contrasted sharply with the elaborate garments and exotic appearances of the other delegates, but her bearing showed that she belonged in this gathering of galactic powers. Station Administrator Chen made the introductions, with careful attention to protocol, though she was clearly struggling to maintain neutrality while managing what could easily become a war council. The tension in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a blade, and everyone present knew that the wrong word could trigger galactic conflict. Representatives of the Starlight Confederation, the Saurian Empire, and the Nexus Coalition, Chen, began formally, "I present Dr. Amanda Foster, representing humanity and offering mediation services for the current dispute." Zixathara was the first to speak, her voice carrying the harsh tones of a predator evaluating potential prey. "Humanity? We have no records of this species. Where do you come from? And what gives you the authority to mediate between established powers?" Dr. Foster had expected this question and had prepared her answer carefully. "Humanity originates from a star system you would know as Sol, located in what you call the Orion Arm. We have been observing galactic politics for several decades while developing our own civilization. We offer mediation precisely because we have no territorial disputes with any of your peoples. Sylviana studied the human with growing interest, her elven senses detecting something unusual about this newcomer. Your species is unknown to our extensive records as well. How is it possible that you have achieved interstellar travel without any of our intelligence networks detecting your presence? We prefer to observe and learn before making ourselves known, Amanda replied diplomatically. We believe that understanding comes before interaction and wisdom comes before action. Valana leaned forward slightly, her mystical senses focusing on the human representative. I sense something about your people that I cannot identify. There is a quality to your presence that feels both familiar and alien at the same time. General Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed brighter as the collective consciousness analyzed the new data. Our probability matrices did not account for the emergence of a fourth major power at this time. Your presence introduces variables that require recalculation of all existing scenarios. Amanda understood that she was being tested by each delegation according to their own cultural values and priorities. The elves wanted to know if humans could be trusted. The Saurians wanted to know if humans were strong enough to matter. The Nexus Coalition wanted to know if humans could be predicted and controlled. The dispute over the Kepler Nebula threatens to destabilize the entire region, she said, taking control of the conversation. All three of your civilizations need the resources located there, but none of you can access them safely while the others maintain hostile positions. War would be costly for everyone involved and could result in the destruction of the very resources you're fighting to obtain. Zixathera snorted in disdain. War is the natural state of the universe. The strong take what they need, and the weak learn to survive on what remains. The Saurian Empire has already begun mining operations in the nebula, because we have the strength to do so, which violates the galactic accords that all of your peoples signed, Sylviana pointed out with diplomatic firmness. The nebula was designated as neutral territory precisely to prevent this kind of unilateral action. The accords were written in a different age, Vorthak replied, his voice carrying the harmony of multiple minds speaking as one. Current circumstances require updated calculations and revised agreements. The probability of peaceful resolution decreases with each passing day. Amanda studied each delegate carefully, recognizing the fundamental differences in their approaches to conflict resolution. The elves believed in honor and tradition, but were pragmatic enough to adapt when necessary. The Saurians respected only strength, and would negotiate only from positions of advantage. The Nexus Coalition saw everything as an equation that could be solved through proper analysis. Perhaps a demonstration of good faith would help move these negotiations forward, she suggested. Each power could show their capabilities and commitment to resolving this dispute through strength rather than violence. The suggestion sparked immediate interest from all three delegations, though for different reasons. Zixathara saw an opportunity to intimidate her rivals through displays of Saurian military might. Sylviana recognized a chance to demonstrate elven technological sophistication. Vorthak calculated that sharing data about capabilities would improve the accuracy of their strategic models. An interesting proposal, Sylviana said thoughtfully. What kind of demonstration did you have in mind? Each fleet could conduct a military exercise in the nearby asteroid field, Amanda replied. Nothing that threatens the station or civilian traffic, but enough to show your respective capabilities and commitment to this process. And what would your people contribute to this demonstration? Zixathera asked with obvious skepticism. We have seen no evidence that this humanity possesses military capabilities worthy of our attention. Amanda smiled slightly, recognizing the opening she had been waiting for. We would be happy to participate in any demonstration of capabilities. In fact, we believe that showing rather than telling is often the most effective form of communication. The three delegations exchanged glances, each calculating the advantages and risks of accepting the human proposal. For the elves, it was an opportunity to demonstrate their technological superiority while learning about potential new allies. For the Saurians, it was a chance to establish dominance through superior firepower. For the Nexus Coalition, it was a way to gather data about all participants while showing their own capabilities. Very well, Sylviana said, after consulting silently with her advisors through their bio-neural link. The Starlight Confederation agrees to participate in this demonstration. The Saurian Empire will show these newcomers what real military power looks like, Zixthera declared with predatory satisfaction. The Nexus Coalition calculates that participating in this demonstration will provide valuable data for future strategic planning, Vorthak added with mathematical precision. Amanda nodded, knowing that the next few hours would determine not only the outcome of the Kepler Nebula dispute, but also humanity's place in galactic politics. Each of the three powers was about to learn that their assumptions about the newcomers were dangerously incomplete. Excellent. I suggest we reconvene at the observation decks in 2 hours. That should give each fleet time to prepare their demonstrations, while maintaining safe distances from the station and civilian traffic. As the delegates filed out of the chamber to prepare for what they expected to be a routine display of military capabilities, none of them realized that they were about to witness something that would fundamentally change their understanding of power in the galaxy. The three ancient civilizations were about to discover that their calculations had failed to account for the most dangerous variable of all, human innovation in the pursuit of overwhelming victory. Station Administrator Chen watched them leave, with growing anxiety, hoping that these demonstrations would resolve the crisis rather than escalate it into open warfare. She had no way of knowing that the fate of the galaxy was about to be decided by a single moment of precisely applied force that would echo through history for generations to come. The asteroid field designated for the demonstration stretched across several thousand kilometers of space, filled with rocks ranging from small debris to massive chunks of stone and metal that had been drifting through the void for millions of years. The observation decks of Haven's Rest offered perfect views of the selected area, with powerful telescopes and sensor arrays providing detailed coverage of the upcoming displays. Representatives from all four powers gathered at the main observation deck, along with Station Administrator Chen and a carefully selected group of neutral witnesses from various species. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation as each delegation prepared to show the galaxy what their civilizations could accomplish when pushed to demonstrate their strength. Silviana stood near the main viewport, her elven senses reaching out through the bio-neural connections to her fleet. She had chosen a demonstration that would showcase both the elegance and the deadly precision of Starlight Confederation technology. Beside her, Lyrelay monitored tactical displays while Valana observed the swirling patterns of destiny that seemed to be converging on this moment. Commander Zixthara dominated her section of the observation deck through sheer presence, her scaled hide reflecting the light from the displays as she coordinated with her fleet commanders. She had selected a target that would allow her ships to demonstrate the overwhelming firepower that had made the Saurian Empire feared throughout the galaxy. General Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed with internal calculations as the collective consciousness processed data from thousands of sensor arrays and strategic computers. The Nexus Coalition had prepared a demonstration that would showcase their ability to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Dr. Amanda Foster stood quietly near the center of the deck, monitoring communications with Captain Maya Rodriguez aboard the Leviathan's Edge. She had spent years preparing for this moment, knowing that humanity's introduction to galactic politics would require a demonstration that established their credibility, without revealing too much about their true capabilities. "The Starlight Confederation will demonstrate first," Silviana announced, her voice carrying the authority of millennia of civilization. "We have selected a target that will showcase the precision and adaptability of our bioship technology." On the displays, 3 elven vessels approached a cluster of asteroids roughly 10 kilometers in diameter. The ships moved with organic grace, their hulls rippling and shifting as internal systems adapted to combat configurations. Weapon ports opened like blooming flowers, revealing biocannons that pulsed with contained energy. The lead ship fired a single burst of what appeared to be living light. The energy struck the target asteroid and began to spread across its surface, like growing vines. Within minutes, the entire rock mass was covered in a web of energy that began to break it apart from within, reducing it to perfectly sized chunks that could be easily harvested for resources. "Impressive control," Amanda commented, genuinely appreciating the demonstration. "Your biotechnology achieves destruction while maintaining the utility of the target material." Silviana nodded gracefully. "The Confederation has learned to work with natural forces rather than against them. Our weapons preserve resources while eliminating threats. Zixthera stepped forward with predatory confidence. Now observe what real firepower can accomplish. Her ships moved into position near a much larger asteroid nearly 20 kilometers across. The Saurian vessels were built for intimidation as much as destruction, their angular hulls bristling with weapon ports and armored plating that could withstand tremendous punishment. When they fired, the display was spectacular in its violence. Plasma cannons unleashed torrents of superheated energy that struck the target asteroid with enough force to light up sensor arrays across the system. The rock simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that only expanding gas and scattered debris remained to mark where it had been. The Saurian Empire does not waste time with precision when overwhelming force will suffice, Zixthera declared, with satisfaction. Our enemies learn quickly that resistance is futile. General Vorthak's turn came next, and the demonstration that followed defied easy understanding. The Nexus Coalition ships approached their target, a mid-sized asteroid, about 15 kilometers in diameter. But instead of using conventional weapons, they began to emit waves of energy that seemed to bend space itself around the target. The asteroid began to phase in and out of normal reality, its molecular structure becoming unstable as the Nexus. Technology manipulated the fundamental forces holding it together. Within moments, the rock had been transformed into a perfectly spherical collection of exotic matter that pulsed with contained energy before safely dissipating into harmless radiation. Reality is merely a set of variables that can be adjusted through proper understanding, Vorthak explained. The Coalition prefers to solve problems through elegant manipulation rather than crude destruction. The 3 demonstrations had been impressive, each showcasing different approaches to the application of overwhelming force. The Elves had shown precision and efficiency. The Saurians had displayed raw destructive power. The Nexus Coalition had demonstrated technological sophistication that bordered on the mystical. Now all eyes turned to Dr. Amanda Foster and the human delegation. The 3 powers expected another technological display, perhaps something that combined elements of what they had already seen. None of them were prepared for what humanity was about to demonstrate. Captain Rodriguez, Amanda said into her communication device, please proceed with our demonstration. On the tactical displays, the human ship moved toward the largest asteroid. In the selected area, a massive chunk of rock and metal that measured over 50 kilometers in diameter. It was larger than any target the other powers had chosen, big enough to serve as the foundation for a small space station or mining colony. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park stood at her weapons console aboard the Leviathan's edge, her hands moving, across controls that had been designed for this exact moment. The weapon she was preparing to fire represented decades of human research into the practical application of kinetic energy on a massive scale. Target locked, she reported calmly. Firing solution calculated and verified. Captain Maya Rodriguez watched the tactical display with the steady calm of someone who understood exactly what was about to happen. You are authorized to fire when ready. The weapon that fired from the human ship was almost invisible. A single, tungsten rod accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by magnetic coils that ran the entire length of the vessel. There was no flash of energy, no spectacular light show, no obvious sign that anything had happened at all. For a moment, the massive asteroid continued to tumble through space, exactly as it had been doing for millions of years. The representatives on the observation deck began to wonder if the human weapon had malfunctioned or missed its target entirely. Then, the asteroid exploded. But explosion was too small a word for what actually happened. The kinetic energy released by the tungsten rod striking at near-light speed was beyond anything the 3 powers had imagined possible. The 50-kilometer asteroid didn't just break apart or vaporize, it converted almost entirely to superheated plasma that expanded outward in a perfect sphere of destruction that lit up space for hundreds of thousands of kilometers in every direction. The silence on the observation deck was absolute and lasted for nearly 30 seconds, as sensors struggled to process what they had recorded. When the expanding plasma cloud finally began to cool enough for clear observation, there was nothing left where the asteroid had been except empty space and scattered atoms. Silviana stared at the display in shock, her centuries of military experience unable to process what she had just witnessed. The precision required for such a strike was beyond belief. But the raw energy involved dwarfed anything in the elven arsenal by orders of magnitude. Zix Thara, who had built her entire reputation on overwhelming firepower, realized that her most powerful weapons would barely scratch the surface of what the humans had just demonstrated. Her yellow eyes narrowed as she tried to calculate the implications for Saurian military doctrine. General Vorthak's crystalline form flickered and pulsed as the collective consciousness struggled to integrate this new data into their probability matrices. Their mathematical models of possible weapons technology had not accounted for kinetic energy delivery on this scale. Dr. Amanda Foster watched the reactions of the three delegations with careful attention, knowing that the next few moments would determine humanity's place in galactic politics for generations to come. The demonstration had achieved exactly what she had hoped. It established human military credibility while raising questions about their true capabilities. Captain Maya Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system with perfect calm. That was a warning shot. We suggest returning to negotiations. The galaxy would remember this moment as the day when the balance of power shifted forever, when three ancient civilizations learned that their assumptions about military superiority were dangerously outdated, and when humanity announced its presence with a single strike that made the stars themselves take notice. The conference chamber that had witnessed such tension only hours before now hummed with a completely different energy as the four delegations returned to their seats around the circular table. The dynamics had shifted in ways that none of the original participants had anticipated, and everyone present understood that they were no longer negotiating from the same positions of power they had held that morning. Dr. Amanda Foster took her place at the table with the quiet confidence of someone who had just fundamentally altered the course of galactic politics. The human demonstration had achieved more than simply establishing military credibility. It had forced three ancient civilizations to reconsider their most basic assumptions about warfare, technology, and the balance of power that had maintained stability for centuries. Sylviana studied the human representative with new respect, her elven senses detecting layers of complexity that she had missed during their first encounter. The precision required for the kinetic strike suggested technological capabilities far beyond what humanity had initially revealed. But more importantly, it demonstrated a level of restraint that impressed her even more than the raw destructive power. "That was an extraordinary demonstration," she said diplomatically, though her tone carried genuine admiration. The precision required to achieve such results while maintaining safe distances from the station and civilian traffic shows remarkable technological sophistication. Lyra Lai leaned forward slightly, her warrior instincts recognizing something in the human approach that resonated with elven military philosophy. The efficiency of the strike was perfect. Maximum effect with minimum expenditure of resources and no collateral damage. It suggests a strategic mindset that prioritizes results over spectacle. Commander Zixathera sat in uncharacteristic silence, her predatory instincts struggling to process what she had witnessed. Her entire worldview was built on the premise that Saurian military might was unmatched in the galaxy, but the human demonstration had revealed capabilities that made her most powerful weapons seem primitive by comparison. "How long has your species possessed such weapons?" she asked bluntly, abandoning diplomatic niceties in favor of direct military inquiry. "We have been developing our defensive capabilities for as long as we have been exploring space," Amanda replied carefully. "We believe that the ability to protect ourselves and our interests is essential for any species that wishes to participate in galactic affairs." General Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations as the collective consciousness attempted to integrate the new data into their strategic models. "Our probability matrices indicate that your kinetic weapon technology represents a fundamental shift in the balance of galactic power. The implications require extensive recalculation of all existing scenarios, which brings us back to the original purpose of these negotiations," Amanda said, skillfully redirecting the conversation toward practical solutions. "The Kepler Nebula situation threatens to destabilize the entire region, but the resources there are sufficient to meet the needs of all parties if properly managed." The shift in tone was immediate and dramatic. Where the earlier negotiations had been marked by posturing and veiled threats, the delegations now approached the problem with genuine interest in finding solutions that would avoid conflict with a species that had just demonstrated the ability to eliminate their fleets with surgical precision. Zixthara was the first to abandon her aggressive stance. The Saurian Empire is prepared to discuss resource-sharing arrangements, provided that our territorial integrity is respected and our access to necessary materials is guaranteed. Silviana nodded thoughtfully. The Starlight Confederation has always preferred cooperative solutions to territorial disputes. We would be willing to participate in a joint development program if proper environmental protections are established for the nebula's unique ecosystem. The Nexus Coalition calculates that shared development would be more efficient than competitive exploitation, Vorthak added. Cooperative resource extraction would maximize output while minimizing waste and conflict. Amanda smiled slightly, recognizing that the human demonstration had achieved exactly what she had hoped. The three powers were no longer focused on establishing dominance over each other, but on finding ways to avoid antagonizing the new player that had just announced its presence with such decisive force. Humanity would be willing to serve as neutral administrators for any joint development project, she offered. Our lack of territorial claims in this region makes us ideal mediators for ensuring fair distribution of resources and adherence to environmental protocols. The negotiations that followed moved with remarkable speed and efficiency. Within hours, the framework for a comprehensive agreement began to take shape. The Kepler Nebula would be designated as a neutral zone administered by humanity, with mining rights distributed equally among the four powers according to their technological capabilities and resource needs. Environmental protection protocols would satisfy Elven concerns about preserving the nebula's unique properties. Security arrangements would ensure that Saurian territorial integrity remained intact while providing access to necessary resources. Efficiency standards would meet Nexus Coalition requirements for logical resource management, but the real transformation was happening on a deeper level. Intelligence networks across all three civilizations were frantically analyzing the implications of human military capabilities. Strategic planners were revising their models to account for a new variable that could project overwhelming force with surgical precision. Political leaders were considering the advantages of alliance with a species that combined advanced technology with apparent restraint in its use. Station Administrator Chen watched the proceedings with growing relief and amazement. What had begun as a crisis that threatened galactic war was transforming into the foundation for unprecedented cooperation between powers that had viewed each other as rivals for centuries. Dr. Foster found herself at the center of requests for formal diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and military cooperation pacts. The three established powers had quickly recognized that antagonizing humanity would be both dangerous and unnecessary, while cooperation could provide benefits that none of them had previously imagined. Captain Maya Rodriguez received regular updates from the negotiations while maintaining her ship at a respectful distance from the station. The Leviathan's edge had become a symbol of human capabilities, its mere presence serving as a reminder that the galaxy's balance of power had shifted permanently. Admiral Grace Turner, monitoring the situation from the human fleet base, authorized the deployment of additional ships to begin establishing formal diplomatic and trade relationships with the three powers. Humanity's long period of observation was ending, replaced by active participation in galactic affairs. The Kepler Nebula Agreement, as it came to be known, was signed within a week of the demonstration. But its significance extended far beyond resource allocation and territorial disputes. It established humanity as the fourth major power in galactic politics and created a framework for cooperation that would reshape interstellar relationships for generations. Silviana and Maya developed a friendship based on mutual respect for precision and tactical thinking. The Elven commander found human military philosophy refreshingly practical, while Maya appreciated the wisdom that came from centuries of experience managing complex political situations. Zixthara's empire began implementing military reforms that incorporated human tactical concepts while maintaining Saurian cultural identity. The reptilian commander discovered that true strength sometimes meant knowing when not to fight, especially when potential adversaries possessed overwhelming technological advantages. The Nexus Coalition integrated humanity into their strategic calculations as a permanent variable in galactic affairs. General Vorthak's collective consciousness found that human unpredictability actually improved their long-term planning by forcing them to account for factors that pure logic might miss. Dr. Foster became humanity's first galactic ambassador, establishing formal relationships with dozens of civilizations that had previously ignored human existence. The demonstration at Haven's Rest had announced humanity's arrival as a galactic power in terms that no species could misunderstand or ignore. Years later, military academies across the galaxy would study the Haven's Rest demonstration as a perfect example of how to project power while maintaining restraint. The single kinetic strike had achieved more than entire fleets of conventional weapons, establishing human credibility while avoiding the casualties and destruction that would have resulted from traditional shows of force. The galaxy remembered that day, not just for the awesome display of technological capability, but for the moment when humanity proved that they possessed both the power to destroy and the wisdom to preserve. In the end, the most dangerous species in the galaxy had also become the most trustworthy, earning respect through strength, while demonstrating that true power lay in knowing when not to use it. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter after that day, as if the universe had found a new balance that promised stability and cooperation for countless generations to come.